There's a small town stitched to the bottom of a lake. Oh, supposedly. Folks there say when the wind is right, you can hear the old bell from the drowned church tolling under the water like a heartbeat. It's peaceful there, mostly. The mornings come in soft as wool, and the gulls wheel over the cracked piers like white commas pausing the sky. That's where Mara lived, where you can sit on the back steps and feel the sun climb your shoulders like a sleepy cat. She liked the peace. She wore it like a shawl. She would carry bread home from the baker's and hum, and even the stray dogs wagged hello. See? Tranquil as a held breath. And then her husband's shadow started talking. Not at first. Don't get fidgety. He was simply late, often, like a tide that forgot its schedule. Elias, tall, gentle laugh, the kind of hands that made chairs steady and knives sharp. A carpenter by day, and a player of impossible melodies at night, plucking tunes from an old mandolin that glowed like honey. One evening, he didn't come home with the loaves. He didn't come home with anything at all. The mandolin in the corner kept a silence that had shape and weight. The lamps dimmed early. And on the kitchen wall, there it is, look, the shadow of a man stood where no man stood. Elias. Mara asked, pot halfway to the table. Calm voice, small smile. She'd learned to be gentle with the strange, the way one is gentle with a bird trapped behind a window. The shadow on the wall raised his head. Now, if you're imagining a puppet, a trick of light, stop. Because the lamp was steady, and the window shade was still, and when Mara reached out, her own hand's darkness didn't quite align as it should. The room smelled faintly of rain on coins. Mara, the shadow said, and you could hear Elias in it. You could hear the worn joy in his hello, the tired apology in his name for her. She would tell me later. Oh, I met her once after, but hush, she would tell me how peaceful she felt at first. Like a warm lake around the ankles. There you are, she murmured, and a smile curled up, timid, hopeful. Late again. Breadless, I see. The shadow smiled, too. It was a slim crescent cut from darkness, slick as a river rock. I thought you'd be asleep. I waited, she said. I kept your supper hot. She gestured to the pot. Stew. Stew, the wall said fondly, as though it were a child's name. She ladled a bowl. The steam rose in shabby ghosts. When she set it in front of the empty chair, the shadow sat, and if you were watching with the wrong kind of eyes, you might insist you saw nothing. But Mara saw. She always had good eyes for things that tried not to be seen. They ate. She ate, to be precise. The shadow answered questions with soft humor and told her about the town. The miller's new daughter had hair like corn silk. The baker had burnt the morning batch and given away the ruined loaves to children. A red fox had been seen at noon, bold as a cat. Small things. Warm things. Peaceful things that set the table for big ones. Where did you go? She asked finally, cleaning the last crumbs out of her bowl with an inch of bread. The shadow's silence rolled over the floor and bumped into her knees. Mara, it said, I am here. Yes, she said gently. But where were you before? The shadow looked at the window. The lamp light clung to its outline and stuttered a little. Under, it said. Under where? Under the lake. Now the town tells stories, remember? About bells underwater. About foundations and left-behind steps that lead nowhere. They tell them when the dusk comes quick. They are meant to prickle, then melt. But this was Elias's voice, and Elias didn't tell stories after sundown. He said his grandmother had told him never to court darkness when it was already in the room. Under the lake, she repeated politely. Ah. He nodded, and when he nodded, a picture frame on the adjacent wall tipped its head with him, as if the shadow were the weight of the whole room. Did you swim? She asked, with a little laugh to keep the idea from breaking its teeth on her. No, he said. I walked. And your shoes are dry, she said lightly, looking at nothing, touching the rim of her bowl. They stayed behind, the shadow said. The lamp didn't flicker, but the shape of his shoulders did, a smudge trembling. Is that a joke? She asked, and the laugh sounded too bright this time, a coin tossed toward a well that had no bottom. The shadow was quiet. Quiet in a way that bent the corners of things. Mara stood. She tidied. She rinsed. The shadow watched from the chair. The faucet stream sounded like a radio tuned just between stations. SHHHHH. Peaceful if you let it be.
She let it be.
She wanted to ask 100 questions. She wanted to reach into the wall and pull him out by his tie, then realized he wasn't wearing his tie. She wanted to climb into the shadow herself and look from his angle. Instead, she dried her hands and said, "Are you home for the night?" "Yes," the shadow said. "I'm home." "Good," she said, and smiled the kind of smile you put on gently, as if it might tear. She went to bed. The shadow followed. Oh, it didn't walk. You can't imagine that, right? When she crossed the threshold, the darkness dragged itself across the corner and planted itself along the headboard. It lay there like a second rail. "Good night," she whispered. "Good night," he said, and, to her credit, she slept. She slept deeply. The kind of sleep that keeps the wolves fed far away and leaves your mouth soft. She dreamed, and her dream was a mandolin dropped into clear water and the way the strings sang as air left them. It wasn't frightening. It wasn't anything. Past midnight, strange things padded down the hall. The clock in the kitchen began to tick backward.
Tick, 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 simple as that.
The tea tin on the shelf burped itself open, plop, and the bags inside rustled like moth wings. The door to the pantry breathed, long, as if it had circulated the entire house in and out and found something new in the exhale. From the roof, the soft sound of footsteps. From the underside of the bed, a whisper that didn't decide on a language.
These were small things.
Little wrongs with cute feet, stepping lightly. They left the peace of the place intact if you didn't stare. Mara did not stare. She slept while the window gathered a bruise of frost around the corners, though it was spring. She slept until the birds politely tapped the morning upon the sill. When she woke, the shadow was waiting. It made a neat right angle between the dresser and the wardrobe, as if measuring the room. "Coffee?" she asked, "because the body is a boat, and rituals are the rocks you tie it to." "Yes," said the shadow. "I miss the smell of it." She blinked. "You can't smell it?" The shadow's pause was a puddle you could fall into. "I remember it," he said instead. She brewed. The kettle grinched, ski, and when it sang, the song snagged, like thread caught on a nail, then went on as if nothing had happened. She poured 2 cups. One for her, one placed by his empty chair, because habit is a kind of prayer. "I have to go into town," she said. "The shop needs new pegs, and the baker will think we died if I don't appear." "Don't go near the pier," the shadow said. Her spoon stopped. It touched the side of the cup and made a single, silvery note, and then even that sound seemed to wonder if it had said too much. "The pier?" "Yes," he said, a little quickly, like swallowing hot tea. "Please." "Not today." "Why not today?" she asked, and the question wore a cardigan of calm. "Because the boards are tired," he said, "and the men who lean against the rails know things only their mouths don't. Because there is a rope under the 3rd plank that wishes to be used. Because the bell is ringing, and you can't hear it from the shore." She sipped coffee and decided, in the softest part of her mind, to go nowhere near the pier for the rest of her natural life. Then she went. Don't judge her. Don't even tilt your head. People are not common sense with shoes. She told herself she would only pass nearby, only skirt the road, only look at the water for behind the baker's house where the gooseberries grew feral. The morning had that modest glow of a good loaf. People greeted her with nods, with Mara, with "Did Elias bring you that mandolin string I ordered?" And she smiled and said, "Soon, I think," because she wasn't ready to spread a shadow over their bread. At the square, the pigeons sermonized on the statue's head. The miller's new daughter, hair like corn silk, yes, the shadow's detail had been true, chased chalk lines on the cobbles. Everything breathed harmlessness, and yet there was a thin edge in the air, like a paper cut you don't notice until the sheet goes pink. She bought pegs. She bought a small jar of cinnamon for no reason. She bought a bag of buns that were still so warm she had to dance them hand to hand. And then, because the road is a spell and names are the words that cast it, she found her steps arranging themselves toward the pier. The boards did look tired. They had that gray of respectable age, and the hush of listening wood. The water lapped little slap-slap kisses. She did not walk onto the pier. She stood near it. She watched a gull sit on the post and consider the moral complexity of stealing a fisherman's bait.
Peace, yes.
Piece with a pin in it. Down the planks, a man leaned. He had a hat that was too flat and eyes that had been looking at water for too long. He glanced at her without surprise. "Morning, Mara." "Morning," she said. "Elias about?" he asked. A casual hook flicked into conversation. "He's home," she said carefully. "Good," the man said. "There's talk he was walking the old church steps." He said it like a joke you could choose to laugh at. Mara's smile did not explain anything to anyone. "People like to talk," she said. "They do," the man agreed. "They do, they do." He tapped the rail. "Hear that?" "What?" "The bell," he said, and he smiled, and his teeth had more spaces than they needed. "It's always ringing. We've just grown rude." Mara took a neat step back. "Buns?" she asked suddenly, opening the bag and offering it to him. He took one. He held it as if it were already a memory. "Thank you," he said. "Don't stay." Then his eyes slid to something over her shoulder and changed shape. "Oh," he added softly, but the word belonged to a different conversation. She turned. The water beyond the last post was flat, untouched by any playful wind. And yet, something moved under it, not like a fish, not like a boat. The surface dimpled, then smoothed, then dimpled again, as if the lake was being pressed from the underside by knuckles. She felt, brief as a blink, the sensation of someone blowing on the back of her neck. She went home. You can walk quickly without anyone noticing. You can keep your breath in your pocket like a folded note. She did both. At her door, she paused. The handle was cold. Not winter cold. Not ice cold. Church cold. Under the lake cold. She breathed once and went in. The lamp was lit. The shadow sat in the chair, shoulder to shoulder with the afternoon that came through the window as if it were the same substance in two different moods. "You went," the shadow said. "I stayed near," Mara said. "You were right. There is a rope under the third plank." "You saw it?" "No," she said. "But I knew it in the soles of my feet." He bowed his head. Do shadows bow? This one did, and for a moment the room grew taller, as if ceilings are made of permission. "Thank you for coming back." "I always come back," she said. "I didn't," he said, too quickly, and then there it was, honest, like a blade laid flat between them. "I didn't come back." "You are here," she said. "I am not," he said, and when he said it, the kettle in the corner rattled its lid. "I am telling you the truth." She set the buns on the table. She unrolled the pegs and lined them up like little bones. Her heart, steady. Her face, steady. But her shadow, cast unimportantly on the floor, got up and crossed its arms. "Elias," she said, and the name had to try twice to get out, because it was carrying something heavy. "Are you dead?" "No," the shadow said with an eagerness that was its own kind of terror. "No. No. Mara, I'd tell you the truth." "Then where are you?" There was a sound as if someone were stirring a spoon in the water inside the walls. "Under," he said again. "Between the bell and the silt. Between the last step and the first breath." "I don't know what that means," she said, and then she surprised herself by laughing, small and bright, like a bird mistaking a glass pane for a sky. "Do you?" The shadow laughed with her. It was a tender sound that made the hair on her arms stand up in rows. "No," he admitted. "I know only what-ifs." "Tell me an honest thing," she said suddenly, as if they were in a game they'd forgotten and were delighted to rediscover. "Tell me one thing that is true that I will hate." He was quiet long enough for the house to make its own little noises again. Tick forward, tick back, a sigh, a tiny footfall from nowhere to nowhere. Outside, a cart passed, and the donkey snorted like a baritone. "You once lowered your head to the well and wished I would leave," he said at last. Mara stood very still. You could put your hand into stillness like that and lose it up to the wrist. "I wished for quiet," she said, "because even in a house with a shadow, a woman can stand up straight with her own honesty. You sang when I needed silence." And I sang because I thought silence meant endings, he said. Both things were true. She sat opposite the chair that held nothing but him. Did you? What? Leave? Yes, he said. Because the steps asked. The church steps? In the lake? Yes. They asked. They said there's a throat to the world, and it needed clearing. The shadow's mouth made a careful line. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to say something pretty instead. But pretty is a lie in the mouth of danger. Why did they ask you? Her voice was calm as a winter coat. Because I always answer, he said, and Mara covered her eyes, briefly, with a hand that did not tremble. Unexpected things then. Oh, you like your shocks. Here they come, polite as letters slid under a door. First, the photographs in the hall rearranged themselves. The frames did not scrape. They didn't need to. The youngest years stepped forward, the eldest stepped back, and the wedding portrait, Mara in blue, Elias with a shy tie, slid to an angle and then to the floor. The glass did not break. It breathed out fog as if it had been keeping secrets warm inside. Second, the mandolin in the corner plucked a chord by itself. Not a ghostly catwalk chord, no, a clean, sweet E minor that walked down into the floor as if there were stairs. Third, the front door clicked its bolt even though she had not touched it since entering.
Click.
The piece in the room put its hands in its pockets and waited. Mara didn't scream. She had never liked throwing her voice into the jaws of a thing that might want to taste it. She stood, went to the fallen photograph, and set it gently on the table. The faces inside it were not exactly their faces. Something had changed. Elias's eyes looked left, out of frame, toward water. Her own mouth, once a shy smile, had a pinched look of someone listening to a distant voice.
Sit with me, she said.
And tell me one more truth I won't like. I don't like them either, the shadow reminded her, almost apologetic. Good, she said. We can dislike them together. The rope under the third plank, he said. It is tied to a bell. If you pull it, the lake will pour down instead of up. She pictured it. Water unlearning itself, gravity yawning backwards, fish confused into silence. Who would pull it? Someone who doesn't believe anything they can't hold, he said. Which is many someones. And if it pours down, everything gentle will find a ledge to stand upon, the shadow said slowly. But some won't. She looked at the mandolin. She looked at the kettle. She looked at the place on the floor, where morning liked to lie. Will you? I don't know, he said. And there it was again. The truth like a neat knife, not cruel, but bright. The sky outside made a small, brave blue. The world kept on doing its chores. The wind folding laundry in the trees, the ants carrying commas of crumbs, a neighbor arguing softly with a chicken. Peace hummed in all of it, a soft, stubborn thread. Mara tied her hair back. I'm going to the church, she said. The one underwater? Asked the shadow, startled into another shape for a second. Thin, tall, twitching at the edges like a moth's wing. The one on the hill, she said. The dry one. The bell there hasn't rung in months. Maybe it's jealous. Maybe it's kind. Either way, a bell knows a bell. It won't help, he said, honest again, helplessly. Maybe not, she admitted, and smiled the way you smile at the ocean when you're only a person and it's the ocean. But it will be something true I can do. She put on her coat. She reached for the door. The bolt was still set. She thumbed it back. The door opened as if it had expected to do nothing else all day. Mara, the shadow said. It was Elias's voice, right there where he never wasn't. Be careful. Always, she said. Not always, he said, and she looked over her shoulder and let him have the last word, which is a gift you can give to a person you love even when they are only light turned wrong. On the road, the day was rinsed clean. Children argued about nothing important. A cat chose the exact center of a sunbeam and pretended it wasn't on purpose. The hill shouldered the town like a quiet friend. Halfway up, she passed Mrs. Dallow at her gate. The old woman held a bowl of peas and was shelling them into a small green avalanche. Off to pray? The old woman asked, ironic as sugar. Off to listen, Mara said. Same thing. Mrs. Dallow said. On a good day. She flicked a pea toward a robin, and the bird cocked its head as if trying to decipher a riddle with only 2 words in it. Inside the church, the air was cool and smelled faintly of hymnals and the dust of forgotten sentences. The bell rope hung down like a patient arm. She touched it, and it was warm. That should have been impossible. Bells aren't warm unless you're close to noon. It wasn't noon. Mara wrapped the rope around her fist. The world waited. Back at the house, the mandolin hummed an expectant note. The photographs turned their gazes toward the kitchen, as if sensing gravity preparing to make a point. The kettle lid trembled, knocked once. Tick, as if agreeing to a pact. The shadow stood up from the chair, without standing. It lengthened along the floor and up the far wall, until it could look out the window and see the line of the hill and the church roof spine. Mara, it said, very softly. This is the part where you hush, yes?
Yes.
Good. Listen first.
She did.
She closed her eyes. The rope in her hand was a heartbeat. The church around her was an ear. She listened, and what she heard was nothing first, then the smallest sound, not a bell, but the idea of a bell. The breath a bell takes before it sings. One intake, readying. Outside, the wind sighed and then stopped as if remembering something urgent it had promised elsewhere. The town had that feeling we all know, the split second before a glass breaks, the skin prickle before lightning, the tightness in your mouth before you say the truth that will rearrange a room. Mara opened her eyes. She pulled the rope once, gently, the way you wake a friend. The bell answered, not loud, not church loud. It gave a humble, human sound, the sound of a bowl set on a table, of a foot on a stair, of a name said in a kitchen doorway. It was a good sound. It was a peaceful sound. It did not keep the floor from adjusting under her feet. Because in the same breath, the bell under the lake answered, too, and it was a deep note, miles wide and inches away, and the 2 tones met in the air between them and made a third thing. Call it a seam, call it a mirror, call it a path. Down in the square, the pigeons lifted as one like a gray exclamation. At the pier, the rope under the 3rd plank twitched, without waiting for a hand. In Mara's home, the shadow, not Elias, not a lie, straightened, and if darkness can look resolved, it did. It said, and there was relief in a syllable that could have put out a candle from across the room. Now you hear it. Mara let the rope slide. I do. What do you hear? The shadow asked. Away, she said. And the truth, the shadow said, almost tender. It hurts less when you hold it with both hands. Mara looked out the stained glass at the lake that lay like a laid-down beast. Then I'll need both, she said. She stepped back from the rope. The bells, above and below, fell quiet as if someone had put a finger to their mouths. The hush that followed wasn't empty. It was thick, like the air before rain that remembers a field by name. On the threshold, she hesitated. At her feet, on the stone, a shape quivered that wasn't hers. A second set of footprints waited, dark as spilled tea, and they walked down the steps and out into the bright day, stopping just where hers did. Elias, she whispered, not because a church needs whispers, but because her ribs did. The shadow at her feet whispered back without moving. I am telling you the truth. Mara smiled, the small, dangerous smile of someone who has made up her mind in a gentle way that cannot be undone. Good, she said. Then come with me. Step lightly. Peace is sleeping in a rocking chair, and we don't want to wake it too hard. Mara and the honest shadow came down the hill together, like a pair of sentences that rhyme without meaning to. The day had the shy brightness of a pearl, clouds thin as breath, sun peering through like a surprised guest. The town wore its chores like an apron, doors opening, rugs shaken into tiny storms, the baker's window fogged with sugar. Left, the shadow said, flattening over the cobbles. Past the tailor's. Why? She asked, kindly, as if humoring a child who believed in maps drawn on the air. Because the tailor keeps a needle that fell from a sky once, he said. If we ask nicely, it will thread water. Mara's eyebrows did their private waltz. A sky needle. Yes. And a bell with a lake for a mouth. Yes, the shadow repeated, a little sheepish, a little proud, the way you are when your truths sound like fables in daylight. At the tailor's, a bell jingled the way a secret laughs to itself. Mr. Pell, tall, thin, hair combed so straight it might squeak, peered over his spectacles and offered the universal greeting of the domestically flustered. Mara, I was just thinking of, oh, your hem. No, that was last winter. Do you need thread? Yes, Mara said. And then, with the politeness of someone requesting a peculiar spice, the one that sows water. Mr. Pell blinked once.
Twice.
His eyes became small clocks, deciding what time to show. Then he turned without a word and went to the back, past bolts of fabric that exhaled faintly as if they remembered being wind. He lifted a tin from a shelf. The tin looked ordinary the way a whisper looks like a breath. Inside, on black velvet, lay a needle that made the room tilt, a thin sliver of silver with a hole like a moon. Grandfather pulled it from the sky during a meteor shower, Mr. Pell said softly, because some stories refuse to be told loud. He said the night sewed itself shut afterward. May I borrow it? Mara asked. No, he said immediately, then hesitated.
Yes.
If you return it. If the sky asks for it back, you must give it. If the lake asks for it, you must ask who taught it to write letters. I always ask who taught a lake to do anything, Mara said, and he, being a man of fabric, accepted this as the sort of answer that sits straight on a person. She slipped the needle into her pocket wrapped in a square of linen. The shadow at her feet altered, the way handwriting changes when the writer decides to tell the truth halfway through the letter. Thank you, Mr. Pell, she said. Mind your hems, he said, as if that were the same as minding your life. Sometimes it is. Outside, the square had acquired a hush. Not an empty hush, a full one, as if silence were a bowl and someone had filled it with cream. People moved more carefully without knowing why. A dog, about to bark, decided against it, reconsidered life, and sat. The pier again, the shadow said, reluctant and resolute. I thought you didn't want me near it.
I don't, he said.
But the rope under the third plank fidgets when we ignore it. If no one watches, it will choose its own hand. Ropes are dramatic, Mara said, because sometimes humor is a rope you throw yourself. At the water, the boards looked older than they had any right to be, and newer in certain places, as if time had laid planks over itself. A gull watched them with the moral patience of bureaucracy. A boy trailed a stick along the rail, making a clock out of the pier. Tick, tick, tick. Back, the shadow said, flattening itself so thin it was nearly a rumor. Stay just here. She stopped before the first board. A dark stripe showed between planks 3 and 4, like a closed eye refusing to open. If you leaned, you could see it, the rope, salt-bitten and frayed but not weak, tied in a perfect, smug knot. Don't touch, the shadow breathed. I wasn't going to. You were thinking about it. I think about many things I don't do, she said serenely, and then 3 unexpected things occurred in the same calm second, like cards laid down in a trick. First, the lake took a breath. It didn't splash, didn't wave. The surface went convex, a slow, beautiful swell, as if something huge beneath had inhaled and the water, being polite, had made room. Second, the bell below gave a single, small note, a polite ahem, and every metal thing in town answered. Nails hummed. Forks sang in drawers. The tailor's pins vibrated into a minor chord that made Mr. Pell swear under his breath and apologize to no one. Third, the rope twitched toward Mara as if greeting an old friend. She stepped back. The gull, scandalized by restraint, flapped away. The boy with the stick froze, then smiled with the secret smile of someone who has just decided to remember this forever. Is this the part where the terrifying thing happens? Mara asked, voice mild, as if requesting the next course. Several, the shadow said, but softly. From the pilings, barnacles unfastened themselves with tiny pops, like 100 bubble wrap size, and fell back into the water as if the pier had decided their rent was overdue. A slick, eel-long shadow slid between planks 2 and 3, then paused, then reversed, reconsidering the architecture of this particular temptation. The farthest post leaned an inch toward the lake, and then straightened as if embarrassed. Then, down the road, a procession appeared that shouldn't have existed. 5 townsfolk, each carrying something wrong the right way. Mrs. Dallow, peace forgotten, held a mop, upside down, the wet strings trailing like jellyfish. Mr. Pell himself, jaw set, carried his meteor needle threaded through a loop of ribbon, as if leading a star on a leash. The man from the pier, hat flatter than ever, bore a small bell wrapped in a blue cloth. A girl whose name Mara did not know cradled a fishbowl with no fish and no water, only a single white stone. And the miller's corn-haired daughter, chalk still on her hands, gripped the air as if leading an invisible goat. They walked calmly, as if in a festival for which no one had received invitations or instructions, and arrived at the shore with the composure of those who realize only after setting out that they've been practicing for this all their lives. "Ah," the shadow said. "They heard it too." "What exactly did we hear?" asked Mara, who valued nouns and verbs when situations tried to be adjectives. "The seam," the shadow said, "where the bell above and the bell below lace together. It's opening. We must stitch it with water and light, or else down will learn to be up," Mrs. Dallow finished briskly, surprising them all with her unruffled tone. "And up will sulk." Mara smiled despite the prickle on her arms. "Hello," she said to the procession. "We're doing a very strange thing very gently." "Good," said the hat man, and showed teeth that had learned politeness late in life. "No one panic. Panicking teaches the wrong lesson." They arranged themselves, the hat man at the third plank, the girl with the stone just behind him, Mr. Pell with his star needle to the left, Mrs. Dallow and her sea mop to the right, and the chalk-fingered child directly in front of Mara, drawing a square on the air and then shading it in until, listen, that square held. "You made a window," Mara murmured. "It's a door," the child corrected, with the gravity of experts. "But it pretends." The rope gave another eager twitch. From the lake's middle, a circle of darker water widened, as if someone were unscrewing a plug from the world. "Mara," the shadow said, voice low as felt, "thread the needle." She unwrapped Mr. Pell's inheritance. The needle shone like a promise you accept even before you understand it. She licked the thread of thought, the one that runs through a person and ties the day to the night. Don't laugh. She could feel it thin, stubborn, humming with tiny yes. She threaded it through the little lunar eye. The needle clicked, satisfied. "Now sew the reflection to the real," the shadow said, "and if you think that's too poetic to be useful, you have never had to fix a thing that breaks both inside and outside at once."